I think we will start our next session. So I request everyone outside to come and sit in front of the dais. We are starting. Please, everybody, please come and settle down inside.
Friends, I think we should begin. We'd like to finish this session before everyone dies of hunger. So those of you who are still outside, please come. Okay. So, well, sadly, Keshavan Veluthat is not with us. He's a very committed prekshaka of Kutiyattam, and he's been here many times over the last years and taken a very active part. He's, as probably all of you know, he's probably the best historian of pre-modern South India in this generation. He's been ill, quite ill for some time. The good news is, and there's good news, we saw him yesterday in Karutur, and he's looking great. It seems that he's conquered the illness, or is at least moving in that direction. He's been amazingly courageous and optimistic throughout, and it was wonderful to see him like that. So I'm going to read a few passages from his essay. It's a historian's essay about the evolution of Kutiyattam. He's called it The Historical Evolution of Kutiyattam. It will go into the book that we're planning that will include these presentations today. But he told me yesterday, and anyway, I told him too that I was going to give a few sample paragraphs from this essay. So let me read his introduction. He says, I deem it a huge honor to be called upon to participate in this event. Got together to pay tribute to the immense talent of Guru Margi Madhu Chakyar on the occasion of his Shashtiabdi Purti. This is a milestone when one can look back and assess the distance one has covered in the long and successful journey one has been undertaking. The tradition that Madhu Chakyar has been carrying forward with distinction is, I need hardly say, unique in many ways. The tradition of composing and staging plays in Sanskrit arguably dates from the beginning of the Common Era, and it grew with varying elaborations in different parts of the South Asian subcontinent. However, while it died out in most other regions, it was kept alive in Kerala in the form of Kutiyattam, so much so that it has been recognized as a masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO. He says, I must confess that I have no equipment to assess Madhu Chakyar as an artist. I seek in this essay to pay my tribute to Madhu by examining the process of the historical evolution of the Kutiyattam, the oldest surviving theatrical performance of Sanskrit drama. It tries to inquire into its origins, necessarily hazy, and the way in which it evolved and grew in the medieval centuries. The earliest reference to a performance of a Sanskrit play in South India is arguably in the epic, he calls it an epic, the Silapadikaram. Actually, it's a kavya. But anyway, Silapadikaram. This is a beautiful, in the Tamil work, of course, this is a beautiful account of an Arya kuthu that is performed by a kuthu Chakayan of the kuthu from Parayur. And it is described in a rather detailed way. Here's a small passage. This is from the Vanshikandam, the final book of the Silapadikaram, when the Chera king, Shengutuvan, has come with an image of Kannahi to Kerala, actually. Here's the passage. The Kutiyattam danced by Shiva, with Uma as part of himself, to the rhythm of the tinkling anklet on his feet, the hourglass drum echoing in his graceful hand. His red eyes expressed many moods, and his red matted hair flew in all directions. Her anklet did not stir, her bracelet was still, her girdle was silent, her breast did not shake, the jewels on her head were undisturbed, and her knotted hair did not become loose. So the fact that the performance by a kuthu Chakyan, and that too from Parayur, which is Paravur, which was, says the epic, renowned for Brahmins proficient in the four Vedas, that is of utmost importance. Parayur or Paravur was one of the earliest seats of Brahmanas in Kerala. Our Chakyan was from this village in all probability. We start getting epigraphic references to the performance of kuthu from Kerala and the remuneration that the Chakai artists got from the time of the Chera kingdom, that is around the 9th century through the 11th century. The dynasty that ruled from Mahodhayapuram, which is today modern Kodungalur. Interestingly, Kunavayal Kotam, where the Silapadikaram was composed, has been identified as in the vicinity of Kodungalur. So also Parayur or Paravur, mentioned above, is not only close to Kodungalur, but is also shown to have been influential in the polity, sending two of its representatives to the king's council, known as the Nalutali, with its seat in the temple called Neriyatali, the big temple. And historians have identified the big temple with the Tiruvanjikulam or Tiruvanjikulam Shiva temple in the town, in Kodungalur. All these factors, the Chera rule, the Brahminical associations, the temple of Tiruvanjikulam, have great importance in the history of the evolution of Kutiyattam. There is one more important association of the beginning of Kutiyattam and Mahodhayapuram or Tiruvanjikulam, that may have some relevance in speculating about the beginnings of Kutiyattam. The Chakyars believe that when their art is not patronized by the big temples anymore, that is, when they have to perform in private residences, illete kuthu, wearing clothes washed by women of untouchable castes, manati mate, and using inferior flowers, usually not taken for ritual purposes, in the light of lamps which are not bronze. If all of this happens, they must perform for a last time in the Tiruvanchikulam temple, leave their costumes on a peg that is there in the temple, and leave for Kashi. That paragraph actually came from Madhu. And it's apparently, this is me speaking, it's apparently something well known in the Chakyar tradition. That the last performance should be in Tiruvanchikulam may point to a remote memory, dormant somewhere in the subconscious, about the first performance, which too must have been in the same temple more than 12 centuries ago, under the patronage or even the direction of King Kulashekara Varman, the author of the two plays that we know. Whether or not it shows the real origins of Kutiyattam, it certainly shows an unmistakable connection between the roots of the performance and the royal temple at the Chera capital, that is Tiruvanchikulam. Keshavan, of course, he's a historian who loves working with inscriptions, and he has some pages here of inscriptions, just to give you a taste of that. He says, inscriptions of the period of the Chera kingdom of Mahodayapuram speak of provisions made to perform Sanskrit plays as kuthu in temples, such as the Kalyangam kuthu. That's Act 4 of the Balacharita, attributed to Bhasa. Wrongly attributed to Bhasa, if you ask me. But he doesn't say that. And that's referred to, by the way, this Kalyangam kuthu is referred to in the famous Tiruvalla copper plates. And there are also profuse references to the Nangayars, and a few other inscriptions speak about the grant of land to the Chakyars as Chakkaimar Vritti, or service tenure, due to the Chakkais. Families of Chakyars acquired exclusive rights to perform in individual temples, which rights are known as Ariyantaram, for which the temples granted land to them, which they enjoyed through inheritance. We have records from the Tamil country which show that the Chora rulers had supported performance of Sanskrit plays in the temples, and that the Chakai artists who performed them were given land. Perhaps the most informative inscription is from the Gomukteshvara temple at Tiruvavaritturai in Tanjavur. It's dated in the 9th regnal year of Rajaraja Chora. That's 994, 995 in the Common Era. It records the decision of the village assembly of Satanur in what's called Tengarai Tiraimuranade to create a nibandha, that is an endowment for enacting, and a nibandha as nritta bhoga, to share in the expenses of the dance, in favor of one Kumaran Sikandan. A Sakayar was in enjoyment of Sakai Kani, that means land earmarked to the festival each year in perpetuity. It also prescribes the daily material provisions made for the performance: 2 measures of rice for making rice powder, 3 betel nuts, 2 bundles of betel leaves, 1 uri of oil for preparing the collyrium, the black pigment, and 1 nari, that's a measure that amounts to approximately 200 grams of turmeric, all of which had to be measured out to the temple treasury by those in charge of administering the festival on the respective day. 2 points in the record are crucial. first that the Nibandha is to Namur Chakai Kani Udaya. That is somebody, some Chakyar, some Chakai, who has Kani rights of possession in the village land. And secondly, that the Aryakuta Nadaka stipulated to be performed is of Yeruangam, that is 7 acts. Such support that Kutiyattam received, there's a lot more epigraphic material, a lot more. He takes us through that. You can read about it when this essay is published. But let me just add a little bit more. Such support that Kutiyattam received from the temple and positions of power enabled it to develop greater and greater elaboration and refinement. Earlier, each act, whichever the play, was performed in a single day. That's what he says, as the records from the Chera and Chora situations suggest. It increased to several weeks per act in the medieval period, with the result that as many as 88 days are needed to perform a 7-act play, the Ascharya Chudamani. It was even more in the case of plays where the Vidushaka has a role. It would take 41 days to perform just 1 act, the Mantrangam, of the Pratignyaya Gandharayanam. And an 18th century record tells us, this is important, tells us about the performance of a set of the 3 Ramayana plays, the Ascharya Chudamani, the Pratimar Naraka, and the Apisheka Naraka, under the patronage of the Zamarin of Calicut. It took full 458 days. If you think that Kutiyattam is long, we've come for 2 weeks, a little more than 2 weeks, 458 days from October 13th, 728 to January 12th, 1730. What this document shows, among other things, is that Kutiyattam had already acquired all its elaboration by the 18th century. Manuscripts of the detailed Aktaprakarams, the stage manuals, and not so detailed Kramadipikas, which are handed down from generation to generation in the families of the Chakyars, show that the elaborations were already there by at least the 15th century. Tradition has it that these elaborations date from the time of Kulashekara himself. That would be 9th century. And the tradition attributes the entire repertoire of the verses of the Vidushaka to Kulashekara's friend, that is Tolan. Now, this is Keshavan's sentence. He says, there is no support for this dating. I agree with that. Just one more short paragraph. The Kriya and Nritta, which are performed at the beginning of any play, involve many rituals propitiating all gods and go to emphasizing the point that acting the play had already become a ritual. Chakyars believe that once they have tied the ribbon round their head at the beginning of their makeup, nothing should distract them until they have finished. Not even the death of a close relative, in the same way that a dikshita initiated for performance of a sacrifice has full immunity. Thus, performance of a play becomes a ritual, and the kriya and nritta are the first items in it. The actor, generally playing the sutradhara, the stage manager, comes to the stage, and after a preliminary tevaram worship, does a dance and propitiates all conceivable deities. This is not only very elaborate, but also leaves one who watches it wondering whether it is part of the play and whether the one on the stage is a character or a narrator. In allowing itself to such elaborations, Kutiyattam ceased to be what the Natya Shastra had intended a dramatic performance to be. However, apologists of Kutiyattam defended as the Purvaranga that the Natya Shastra prescribes. You can see from this paragraph that there's some controversy about this whole question of the ritualized elements. For those of us who have seen the Nitya Kriya at the beginning in the Purapadu, we've seen it many times. For many of us, this is me, not Keshavan speaking, for many of us it's maybe one of the most beautiful parts of the entire performance. And I don't know if it's right to think of it as only exclusively ritualistic. Actually, it can't be only that. And there's a lot more to be said about it. I'm going to stop here. He has a few paragraphs, very interesting paragraphs, on literary references to Kutiyattam, old ones, including the famous one from performance of Tapati by a dancer who looked a little too closely at the lover of the lady who is the Nayika of this text. We have that. It's a beautiful verse. We don't know exactly when that text was produced, but it must have been relatively early, 12th or 13th century, something like that. So Keshavan speaks about this. You'll have opportunity to read about the evidence that he's brought. I think I'll stop here for now, and I'll ask Abhilash Malayil to present. His title is The Kuthu Rites at Peruvanam, a Granthavari story and its historiographic implications. Please, Abhilash.
Ellarkum namaskaram, and it's a moment of great honor and indeed a moment of intense gratitude to a colleague of mine, Madhuparvam, and I came here, and I'm here perhaps by an accident, because I'm not a scholar looking at the performative aspects and the literary aspects of Kutiyattam or Kuthu. Rather, I was doing another small enterprise looking at the history of a temple which is very close to this place, and which has a history, an important history in my view, of how temples, not the early medieval temples, but the temples of the 16th and 17th and 18th century, and even the first half of the 19th century performed. So I was looking at the history of this temple mainly through, not through inscriptions, but through palm leaf records or chronicles, which we know know by the name Granthavari. The temple I am speaking about is Peruvanam temple, and which is one of the, which belongs to the class of the Mahakshetras endowed or instituted by Parasurama, dating back to or having connection with the Mula Gramas or the early Brahmin settlements. And we have a unique story about Peruvanam regarding its existence or institution, and it links its origin with a group of Brahmanas who are invited or came from the Kaveri Delta. There are many stories, many layers of stories with regards to Peruvanam. And in that, Peruvanam have produced at least 3 Granthaviris, and we have access to 2 of the Granthaviris, and one which is available in print from the early decades of the 20th century, printed by the Cochin state. And recently, another Granthavari was brought out by a researcher from Kalady University, Santhosh Alayadathu. It has been printed in Malayalam with a small study in a journal called Tabasam. And there's another Granthavari, which is perhaps more interesting because we haven't seen it, which is still kept at the Travancore Manuscript Library. So I have my story, the story that I share with you, is taken from the Granthavari, which is published for 2 times, one from the Cochin state, Cochin government, as I already mentioned, and the second time it is published from the Kshetra Navigarana Kalasha Upaharam. There's a volume, special volume, printed in 1974 from Peruvanam itself, where they have reprinted this whole Granthavari after obtaining what they call a certified copy from the Cochin archives, and this is edited by great scholar N.V. Krishna Warrior. So let me, in a minute, we will see the story. Story, I'll be explaining it in Malayalam, but before that, in my reading, there are certain historiographical implication for the story, and this historiographic implication is related to the way in which the institution of temple was approximated, explained in Kerala historiography. We have largely two models. That I would rather say two perspectives, which historians and other scholars tried to, when they wanted to explain temple or describe temple and locate it in the larger history of Kerala or the southern India, have adopted the perspective. One, it emphasizes on the function of temple. And then you have explanation of temple as an integrative institution, integration in the sense that it integrates several segments of society into something which is a whole and which is tangible. And this integrative perspective has an emphasis on the redistributive aspects of temple institutions. First, you imagine temple as a integrative institution, and then you emphasize on how this process of integration has happened by highlighting the practice of redistribution, how this, especially several forms of wealth, both material and symbolic, was accumulated in the temple, integrated in the temple, and then how it became later, at a later stage, became redistributed in the society. And this perspective too, which is actually a continuation from the first perspective, I would call it as perspective to the temple, and the second perspective is approached as a hegemonic institution, with certain ideas, with certain endemic ideas of domination, legitimacy, and counter hegemony. There's both these models. What you see mainly from Kerala, if you see these models, these perspectives, and for the historians, the reference points for articulating both these perspectives are mainly early medieval temples. Early medieval temples, you have the temples starting from, or temples producing inscriptions dating back to the Chera period, or the period of the Perumals from 9th to 13th century, early 13th century. And then we have this emphasis on inscriptional material, and the time period for these temples are mainly located within this early medieval clique, starting from 9th century to the 13th century. Here, in this both perspective, temple was approximated as a whole or a totality, capable of determining or subsuming all its properties, parts, and components. And when you are familiar with, when you read after books explaining these two models, what you understand, there's a problem in my view. I'm trying to kind of propose a critique of these two perspectives by arguing that the historical agency of individual actors, parts, and components were not taken into account in these two major historiographic enterprise. The two models, the perspective which emphasizes on the functionality of the temple, and the perspective which approximate temple as a hegemonic institution. So the individual actors, parts, components were not taken into consideration. Now I come to the part that I am interested in, mainly from my reading of the Peruvanam Granthavari. It's a community or a caste or a group of individuals known as Antaralas. I know that when you speak about Antarala formation, the moment you start speaking about Antarala formation, you have these ambiguities from the literature which has been produced from the early 19th century onwards. And Cezary probably will speak about such a scholarly intervention from the late 18th and early 19th century from Alexander Walker's collection. So from the very beginning itself, and I think this ambiguity about the historical constitution of Antaralas or the what are they, and how they're formed, and what is their history, how many of them, and you find 101 explanation for among historians on this group. These are, roughly speaking, temple service caste, understood as temple service caste by historians, and one of the major intervention is by Professor Keshavan Veluthat, and he had a wonderful classic paper, I would rather say, on the historical formations, genesis of this Antarala temple service groups, where I'm not going into the details of that particular paper. Rather, I focus on this Antarala group, and just to remind that there is severe historiographic uncertainty about the constitution and genesis and the function of this Antarala group. And here I'm looking at the Granthavari, and this historians, it's not the first attempt, rather we have historians starting from K.V. Krishna Iyer, who has looked at the temple palm leaf records or the chronicles. Krishna Iyer, K.V. Krishna Iyer is one of the only historian who had a chance to look at the Granthavari kept with Guruvayur temple, and after that the Granthavari disappeared. No historians were able to see or refer to the Guruvayur temple Granthavari. And then we have a scholar, a fine scholar from Travancore, K. Dharmaraja Iyer, who had looked at the Granthavari palm leaf material from Tiruvattar and Ananda Padmanabha Swami temple, and also from Suchintram. And then we have quite recently, the monumental work of Professor K. N. Ganesh, and who was able to look at the Matilakam records, or the palm leaf records, referring to Ananda Padmanabha Swami temple, and he has discussed how this temple institution worked, and he approached this temple institution from the palm leaf records. But when you enter into the domain of palm leaf records, the temple that you see, it's qualitatively different. And I think this difference in quantity is not a difference at all. But the temple that you see through the palm leaf records of the 16th, 17th, and 18th century is not the temple that you read, that you see in the early medieval inscriptions. Why? Because this palm leaf records, when you come to the palm leaf record keeping tradition of Kerala, it's unimaginably meticulous. So it's just like Madhuvattan acting, with all its intricacies, its sukshmata on stage, performing a ritual, performing complex emotions, giving life to them. It's just like a ritualistic precision of the actor, or of the pujari, or of the tantri, or of the priest that you see in a temple. I think the temple scribes had this model of precision derived from the temple ritual. And this temple documents are so precise, Granthavari documents are so precise, they are obsessed with giving precision to the details that they are presenting before us. And if you look through these details, the institution that you see, the performances, the history of performances that we see are qualitatively, I repeat again, qualitatively different from the temple institution that we see from the medieval inscriptions. And I think, I don't know, it's very intuitive. I think we can propose a formation, a separate formation of an early modern temple. There's something early modern which is appearing in this larger institution, an early modern aspect that we can read. And what that early modern aspect is a larger question. I'm not going into that. The temple that you see is not the temple that you see in the inscriptions. And in the Peruvanam, what we see, the Peruvanam, we have perhaps the first, probably, I don't make the claim of Peruvanam being the first source of making a reference to Kuthu or its accounts, but one of the earliest detailing of how Kuthu was performed, you can get it from the Peruvanam Granthavari. It has two parts, largely two parts. One refers to the Kuthu Padivu, or the Padivu Kuthu. It's mainly deals with or details, provides you details of the accounts of Kuthu as Professor Veluthat has mentioned in his paper about the expenses that were incurred to set up a performance, either as a ritual Adiyantira kuthu or as a special performance. So what we have, I'll just read out from the Granthavari. This will give you kind of a taste of what a kuthu padivu in the Granthavari mode of expression is. So it says, Midhuna Masam, 20 കൂത്ത് പുറപ്പെടുന്നാൾ പരത്തിപ്പണം ഉൾപ്പെടെ മണ്ഡപത്തിൽ പടിയും മേർ ചാക്യാർമാർക്ക് നിരത്തിക്കൊടുക്കേണ്ടും പണം 243. മിഥുന മാസം 25-ന് പടത്തിപ്പണം 3 ഉൾപ്പെടെ മണ്ഡപത്തിൻ പടിയുമ്പേൽ നിരത്തിക്കൊടുക്കേണ്ടും പണം 43. കർക്കടക മാസം സംക്രാന്തി നാൾ മണ്ഡപത്തിൽ പടിയുമ്മേൽ നിരത്തിക്കൊടുക്കേണ്ടും പണം 40. നാളത ദണ്ടും മഞ്ചട്ടിയും കൊടുക്കുന്ന നമ്പൂതിരിക്ക് തീർത്ഥദക്ഷിണ വകയ്ക്ക് പണം 2 നാളത ഓൺ ദ സെയിം ഡേ. ചാക്യാർക്ക് പട്ടുമ്മേൽ കെട്ടിക്കൊടുക്കേണ്ടും മഞ്ചട്ടിപ്പണം 4. കർക്കടക മാസം 20-ന് നമ്പ്യാർക്ക് അണിപ്പണം 18 കൂടെ ഉളിപ്പണം 1. കച്ചമുറി വക വെളുത്തേടത്തിന് പണം 1. കൂത്തിന് വെളിച്ചെണ്ണ ചോദന 5ക്ക് പണം 18 15 കൂടെ ആകെ കൂത്തടിയന്തരം വകയ്ക്ക് ചെലവ് പണം 367. കൂത്ത് പുറപ്പാട് തൂക്കക്കൂടി അരങ്ങ് അലങ്കരിപ്പാൻ തേങ്ങാക്കൊല 3, അടക്കാക്കൊല 3, വാഴക്കൊല 3, വെറ്റിലക്കെട്ട് 3. ചാക്യാന്മാർക്ക് പുകയിലക്കെട്ട് 1.5 നാൾക്ക് 1ക്ക് അടക്ക 11. അങ്ങനെ പതിവ്. So I won't translate this. I'm not able to translate this. Rather, this is a typical Kuthu Padivu description of accounts that you find in the early modern Granthavari material, where everything is documented, including the quantity of tobacco that you are supposed to grant it to the Chakyar performers. And you not only see Chakyar here, rather you see the details, you see the Nambiar, you see the Kachamuri Veluthadan, the washerman, the temple washerman, who is supposed to wash the clothes, including the clothes for the deity, and the clothes that the kacha that is worn by the Chakyar is given to him by this Veluthadan, and the Veluthadan is being mentioned. And you have Nambiyars, and then you have somebody called Tirtha Dakshina, and Manjatiyum Dandum Kodukuna Nambudiri, the Nambudiri Brahman, who provides this Manjati and Dandu. Dandu is very important to the Chakyar performers and everything. And you have more details about this description. I'm not going into that. Just to give a taste of what a Kuthu Padivu account is, I just heard it from the Granthavari. So it's details, and there are more people. There's an entourage of performers, and their supporting staff is being documented with their minute details. And now we have the story. So it says, I'll read out the story in Malayalam, but I'll give you a summary of that story. In Peruvanam, we have two families of Chakyar. Two families of Chakyar, and one was the Mekat Chakyar and the Kutancheri Chakyar. And the Mekat Chakyar and the Kutancheri Chakyar were entitled, were the two families who were exclusively entitled to have the talekattu, the headgear, the entitlement. I would rather take talekattu. It's an object. But simultaneously, if you see the word talekattu in a medieval or the early modern Granthavari material, it also refers to an entitlement. So this is an entitlement. We have talekattu rights being documented from Calicut, from Kannur, from Venadu. So this, I think I take this talekattu not only as a specific object, but also as an instance of entitlement. An entitlement which provides these performers with an exclusive right. So you have two families, and then what happened? One of the trustees of the temple, And there are three major trustees of the temple. By this time, the administration of temple became an extremely complicated, extremely confusing affair. And if there were regarding every single minute details, regarding the rights of a person who is who's supposed to wash the utensils after the temple puja, even that right became an object of conflict between several participants. And these participants will have equally legible or intelligible claims dating back to some time immemorial past. So you have two Chakyar families, and one of the trustee households, Nambudiri households, Kuruvat Avanavu, and Peruvanam Granthavari have a story to tell about how this Avanavu Brahmana, came to be known as Kuruvat Avanavu. He was supposedly belonging to a household, an original household of Nambudiris, but they, in the course of time, became branched out and separated and became two different Nambudiri households. And Peruvanam Granthavari have an interesting story to tell us about how this division has happened. Then what happened? This Kuruvat Avanavu family wanted to have a Chakyar loyal to him. A new Chakyar loyal to him. You have Kuttanjeri and Mekattu, and he wanted to bring a new Chakyar from a place which is not a local place. Rather, he wanted to bring a Chakyar from a distant North Malabar place. North Malabar, we have from the 14th century onwards, if dating of Payanur Pattu, we can accept the dating of Payanur Pattu, that the Chakyar kuthu, the kuthu performed by Shankimar with Mijavu, which is an exclusive mark or a symptom of this kuthu, is nothing else other than the kuthu of the Chakyar from the 14th century. And it has a long, perhaps deep tradition, forgotten tradition of kuthu being performed, Chakyar families being present from the early historical time onwards, I suppose. So this Kuruvat Avanavu wanted to have a Chakyar on his side, loyal to him. He wanted to bring a Chakyar from the North Malabar, that is the family of Mani Chakyar. But the temple administration, there are several layers of confusing administrative arrangements in the temple. None of them agreed with him. This idea was not acceptable to him. And the Kuruvat Avanavu made an open challenge before the temple committee that he is going to obstruct, and he will obstruct Kuthunu Velakku Tattaga, obstruct the performance of Kuthu to the temple. And he did not understood the seriousness of this challenge, because the moment you have a challenge like this of obstructing Kuthu, you have the deity on your as your opponent on the next side, the Eratayappan as your opponent on the next side. So then what happened? The day he went there and tried to obstruct the temple, on the same day, Kuruvat Avanavu died, in the way he says, because of a snake bite. Eratayappan paambu kadichu marichu. And then what happened? In the very next year, the junior Nambudiri of Kuruvat Avanavu, the Kuruvat Avanavile Elayavar, he also went there, and the history repeated, but this time really as a tragedy. And then he also died of the snake bite. The two Brahmanas died in a temple of snake bite. And then what happened? There's another a long line of Nambudiris belonging to this Kuruvat Avanavu households, went there taking up challenge. And they're taking up this challenge because they wanted to give a Kanisthanam, a sthanam, which is a remunerative position to their Chakyar, who would be loyal to them. And the same fate awaited them. All of them died of the snake bite. And the Eratayappan's snake came, and then Eratayappan's snake. Because this is very important, because in the Peruvanam Granthavari, you have at least 4 or 5 instances of people within the temple compound, Madilkakam, dying of snake bite. This is, I think, and all of them, as far as I know this, all of them are Brahmanas. So you have a couple of Nambudiris dying of snake bite, and you have this Ulsava Pattar, the Tamil Brahmanas, who are part of this Akiram or the Agram, the feeding provision within the temple, were also dying by snake bite. This is very interesting. And then all of them died. And finally what happened, you have a little boy remaining in this Brahmana household. And he just came to his mother, told his mother that I have no fate but to go there. And to protect this, the promise that his ancestors have given to this Chakyar, he went there and did the same thing. And then, now the God appeared, and the God speaking, what did God say? പത്താം കൊല്ലത്തിൽ അന്ന് അല്പസന്തതിയായിട്ടുള്ള ബ്രഹ്മചാരി, the little boy, മാണിച്ചാക്യാർക്ക് സ്ഥാനം കൊടുക്കാമെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞിരിക്കുന്ന കാര്യത്തിൽ കാര്യത്തിൽ സത്യലംഘനം വരുത്തുന്നതിനേക്കാൾ this is a satya given to the Chakyar, and the satya is very important, and potentially that to given to a Chakyar it's deadly dangerous. And then സത്യലംഘനം വരുത്തുന്നതിനേക്കാൾ ഞാൻ കൂടി മരിക്കയത്രേ ഇവിടെ ശ്രേയസ് എന്ന് കരുതി he went and said this statement to his mother and went there. And then God intervened. And the God said, that the deity Eratayappan is speaking, ഞാനായിട്ട് ഈ തറവാട് മുഴുവനും മുടിക്കേണ്ട, അതുകൊണ്ട് സ്ഥാനം വിഭജിച്ചു കൊടുക്കണമെന്ന് എരട്ടയപ്പന്റെ ശ്രീകോവിലകത്തു നിന്ന് ദർശനമുണ്ടാക്കയാൽ. Then when this little boy came there to obstruct the kuthu, and then the god appeared, there was a darshanam, there was an anujna, ashariri from the Srikovil of Eratayappan, and Eratayappan sanctioned that. Eratayappan first said that I don't want any more Brahmanicide to happen in this temple compound. And I don't want the family of this little boy to live without any offsprings. I don't want to. This is Brahmanicide is a Mahapataka, and you have to have something extraordinary to redeem yourself from this sin. If we believe the story of Tiruniralmala from the southern Kerala, or many other stories of Mahapatakas that we get from the medieval and early modern Kerala. So then the god intervened, and they decided the sabha. We have 2-3 sabhas, and which sabha we don't know. There's one sabha yogam, there's a karmigaluda sabha, there is an adiyantara sabha. The emergency committee, the committee of the priest, and then the general committee of the temple. So we don't know which committee has taken the decision, but the decision was taken and it's documented. And what the decision that they made, it's slightly it's more complex, and I don't want to go into that. What they decided. So you have to remember, you have to keep in mind that there's a 4-year cycle, a cycle which has 4 years in one row. So the Kuttancheri and Makattu was supposed to perform. The Kuttancheri was supposed to perform Anguliyangam every year. And the 3rd year of his Anguliyangam performance, he had also the right to perform Mantrankam. So he'll perform Anguliyangam for the first 2 years, and the 3rd year he'll perform Anguliyangam along with Mantrankam. And then next 2 years, you have to remember a cycle with 5 years. In the 4th year, the Mekattu will take over, and the Mekattu will perform Mantrankam. And the Mekattu will have 2 successive years of Mantrankam performance. That means the Kuttancheri will continue to perform Anguliyangam every year. Then, now we have a new scenario. Mani has arrived. The kuthu rights have to be divided, and it have to be allotted to the newcomer. Then what they did, they have taken out 5 days from the Kuttancheri's performance. And suppose, I think this Anguliyangam used to be 5 days. And the 5 days from Kuttancheri's performance to Mani. And then and they have a very kind of curious arrangement for sharing kuthu rights between Mekattu and Mani. And for Mantrankam, each of them are allotted 1.5 day, onnara divasam. And then Mekattu will perform for 1.5 day, and the rest will be performed by Mani. And interestingly, when their kuthu ulam and their turns come together, they'll have certain Sankranti Naal. Sankranti is very important. I don't want to explain what is the importance of Sankranti. But on the Sankranti Naal, Mani is given the right to have the Talekattu. The right to perform on the Sankranti day, the right, this is very critical, this is an important right, it was given to Mani, the newcomer. And it is decided in the committee, precisely mentioned in the committee, that the Mekatu should go and get or go and receive the Dandu and Manchatti from the Nambudiri, who is supposed to give it to the Chakyars. And then he have to receive it from the Nambudiri. That means his right is there. Normatively, the right of Mekat is there. It is there without any kind of intervention, obstruction. We have to go to the Nambudiri and receive this Dandu and Manchatti and hand it over to Mani. And the Mani was accommodated. And this is the story, and then the accounts, the Granthavari goes on to describe more and more details about the performances of kuthu. And there is an interesting reference, instruction that of certain protectors or the kaval of the Kuthambalam. And you have a peculiar kind of brahmanas and who are called Muthenmar. And the Muthenmar are, I don't want to explain on that point. Muthenmar are supposed to guard the Kuthambalam. And they cannot enter into Kuthambalam. Only brahmacharis can enter into Kuthambalam, and also the kanyakas are also allowed to enter into Kuthambalam. All others are supposedly standing outside the Kuthambalam. They may be, they have the right to listen to the kuthu that is happening within the Kuthambalam. And this is very important. I'll conclude my presentation by giving a small example of what happened if you don't know the Valadi, the custom of kuthu when it is performed. So there's a Muthenmar who are supposed to guard the stage of kuthu, and they have to stay outside, and they are not supposed to laugh. Chirkade irkanam. They are not supposed to laugh because the kuthu, the performance of kuthu, it's a you know this, and they are not supposed to laugh, and they are the people who guard this temple. Interestingly, this Muthenmar, they have a history, an interesting history of them being fallen brahmanas because they wield arms. And what happens if we have already seen a brahmana taking an oath and then both of obstructing the kuthu performance and meeting meeting death by the snake bite. And we have another instance from Payanur Pattu. The Payanur Pattu, a group of traders who came to Kachilapattanam, and then while they were traveling by sea near to the coast, they have listened to this Kuthin Valadi and the Miravin Oshagal. They happened to hear the sound of the Miravu, and they wanted to see what is happening. And then they asked the people, the people who met on the way, that what is happening. Then they told that there's a kuthu happening in this Parenu temple. And this kuthu was offered by a trader and for his wife, because they had a offering made for a child wish. So the child God has given them the child, and they went there. And when they went there, they entered the temple, the Madhilakam, and they have crossed this. They did not go by the gateway, and they have trespassed this Madhil, and they went inside, and the conflict erupted, and this whole story, and they were murdered, and this whole story of Payanur Pattu revolves around this obstruction of kuthu. And I won't elaborate on that, but what I understand from this dividing or the partitioning of kuthu, the kuthu Pakakal story from Peruvanam, is that what we see here, it's not a mere ritualistic redistributive act. Of course, it's a ritual. It's a ritual with all minute precision. But what we see here, we see here not a redistributive institution, not even an integrative institution, not even a hegemonic institution, but an institution which underbelly, the infrastructural underbelly of this institution is torn with conflict. Every level you have conflict. I think conflict is an important thing. It's a creative It's extremely creative. It makes this whole institution of Kerala Temple of early medieval times a firm-like organization where people play, or historical agents play with rules set by institution and also rule they make. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhilash. I haven't noticed any poisonous snakes around the Kutambalam here, fortunately, but we can see that kuthu is a matter of utmost seriousness, often involving murder over a period of generations. So that's a kind of window into the life of the Chakyars at Peruvanam and their Brahmin patrons. And, of course, the internecine struggles between the Kutiyattam families. Thank you, Abhilash. Our last presentation today is Cezary Galewicz from the Jangellonian University in Krakow. I think I see him on the screen. Is that right? Yeah, okay. Cezary, are you with us? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Great. So welcome. I'm sorry you're not here in person, but I'm very happy to see you on the screen. And now the floor is yours.
Hello. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me? All right. Namaskaram, hello. I hope that you can see me and you can hear me. I somehow cannot see anything than my face. It's a little bit challenging to speak to myself, but let's believe that everything is all right. First, namaskaram, hello to everybody. I do regret not to be with all of you in person for this very important occasion, the celebration of MADHUPARVAM. I can do whatever I can in this form, appearing as a hologram on your screen. And let me share with you my little PowerPoint, because this presentation is very much about images, so otherwise we cannot do that. I'm doing that now. Hopefully it works. Just a moment. Can you see my PowerPoint? Can I have a confirmation? Hello? Hello, hello? Can you see it? I cannot hear anything. All right, thank you. So, a little bit extended title of this presentation is Chakyars in Alexander Walker's notebooks on seeing, scribbling, and history writing. It's a huge subject which I'm going to present to you, out of which a little bit today. Hello? Not getting the screen. Let's try again. Okay. Let's try again. Now, right now you can see myself, yes? I'm going now to share. Maybe I try to share entire screen. Yes, maybe like that. No. Can you see the presentation now? Okay, thank you. So once again, this short talk is going to be rather of the type of showing you a curiosity out of a huge archive of the man called Alexander Walker, a brave Scotsman in the service of East India Company. That happened to spend a chunk of his life in Malabar, mostly by the last 2 decades of the 18th century and a little bit of the beginning of the 19th century, just a little bit. So Chakyars in Alexander Walker's notebooks with a subtitle on seeing, scribbling, and history writing. Why seeing, why scribbling, why history writing? Well, Alexander Walker, who spent most of his time in India as a soldier and administrator and advisor and military commander and military logistics man, he never stopped scribbling. He must have had by himself always a huge supply of very fine, durable paper with a sort of leather cover to survive all the vicissitudes of his situations, whether marching, whether crossing the river, whether taking part in a military campaign against Hyder Ali, whether during an assault, during a siege, or whether in captivity, he kept on writing. He lost his writing several times. He complains about that, but he retrieved them from memories or from other copies. He was mad about keeping several copies of the same. We know it very well. Even our technology seems to be a little bit more advanced. I myself happen to lost all that I had on my computer, not that once. So that was the situation of Alexander Walker. A little bit about that later. And the hero of this short presentation is collective, plural. And it is not Chakyars. Actually, we celebrate today one single only, MADHUPARVAM, but the hero of this presentation is plural. And what it is notebooks. Notebooks and sketchbooks, huge in size and huge in number, the whole archive. But let me start from the man. This is the only image of Alexander Walker that we have, a portrait that he himself commissioned around 1819 when he was a middle-aged man, established already back to Scotland. He was 55 years at that time, and that was after more than 30 years of service in India. Before his last post, and his last post was post of the governor of St. Helena, the same island of Recluse where Napoleon had been kept in captivity. very shortly, biography by dates of Brigadier General Alexander Walker. Of course, this rank had been given to him later on. In our case, during his early years, he appears as lieutenant and then as major. So he was born in 1764 to a Church of Scotland minister, and that was a difficult time for Scotland, and many sons of families tried their luck in East India Company, and he became a cadet in 1780. And already in 1781, he boarded one of the Indiamen for Bombay. But the ship was wrecked and damaged, and they had to come back to Plymouth. But immediately he found another opportunity. He stayed in Bombay, reaching it in the same year after a few months of travel, and that was the distance at that time. In 1782, he takes part in campaigns against Hyder Ali. In 1784, he gets wounded during the famous siege of Mangalore, siege by Tipu. And at the same time, he offers himself as in exchange for the treaty with Tipu. He offers himself in captivity, risking his life. In 1785, he does something entirely mad. It seems today, although at that time it could have presented itself as a huge opportunity, he takes part in a strange expedition organized from Mumbai to the extreme north of Canada in search for the opportunities of the fur trade. And over there too, Alexander Walker does not stop scribbling, writing and sketching and drawing. And famous drawings of the Nootka tribe are his and come from this time. 1788 sees Alexander Walker back in Bombay, rejoining the Grenadier Battalion, and again in the Mysore Wars, now in the rank of captain. In 1799, he becomes even a quartermaster general, which is an important function, and in 1801, he takes part in the most important decision body that had been set up to decide the future of Malabar, namely the Malabar Commissions that operate over the already in a changed setup where Malabar becomes included in the Madras presidency after the first 8 years in Bombay presidency. In 1800s, he's sent to Maratha state to bring peace there, and 1802 to 10 he becomes a political resident in Gatewood, Baroda. In 1807, he takes part in an expedition to Chakyars, and in 1810 he comes back to Scotland. We've seen his name appears in several published documents and showing or registering the social life of the British in India. And we see him among us, among the gentlemen who found the Bombay Society, Oriental Society, Bombay branch of Oriental Society, 1804. He left behind a huge archive. This archive is made of first things that he amassed during his career in India. That was, as we know, more than 500 manuscripts in Sanskrit, Persian, Arabic, but only 160 remained, and they have been donated by one of his inheritors to Bodleian Library, while the bulk of his own writing, that is almost 600 volumes of huge size, more than A3 format, namely 596 volumes, remain locked, and I know what I am speaking, locked in the National Library of Scotland. They are treated over there as some sort of a national treasure, and it's not easy to see them, not to say to photograph them, even though the photography of the objects that are of this huge dimension is notoriously difficult, and several of the pictures that I managed to shoot during my two visits to Edinburgh in 2023-24 proved to be blurred, unfortunately. Anyway, out of these 600 volumes, several are preserved in National Library of Scotland as so-called fair copies. They are very nicely calligraphed, and they seem to be almost ready for printing. But the paradox is that almost nothing of Alexander Walker has ever been published, except for two things. The account of this mentioned earlier by me, expedition to North Canada, and Malabar land tenures that got published out of this huge number of manuscripts, and a chunk of them, substantial chunk, being prepared for publications in the form of so-called fair copies. So this extraordinary figure, Alexander Walker, has only rarely attracted the attention of scholars. One of them was the Gandhian thinker Dharmaraj, who visited Edinburgh in the years 1966-68, and I remember others include Dilip Menon, late 90s, Sanjay Subrahmanyam, 2002, Lisa Rosner, who explored especially his botanical writing and sketching, and more recently Mahmud Purya and Abhilash Malayil. So that's Sree Dharampal, a Gandhian thinker and the author of The Beautiful Tree. Maybe somebody of us remember. He worked and manually copied several volumes of Walker of Bowland Archive in 1966-68. These copies are available online. It's an important source. It's a chunk of writing of Alexander Walker's, an important one, a selection with a certain idea in mind, which found a way for publication and makes now the British narrations of India, its conquest, dominance, and destructions, Alexander Walker's image of India, this is how it is called, and this is published out of the painstakingly typed texts, excerpts from Alexander Walker manuscripts in Edinburgh. So, just a very quick look at the map and political situation. So Alexander Walker reaches Bombay in 1781, around June, And we have the map here, which is printed in 1908 in Gazetteer of India, and he shows India around 1765, so a few years earlier, after Hyder Ali first incursions and probably before invasion of 1766 and first Anglo-Mysore War 1767. So we see here in green, I hope you see it a little bit at least, Mysore occupies a substantial part of South India. This map, which actually was printed in 1793 in London, shows South India after 1792, so the date when the Malabar was ceded to East India Company. And it features Malabar under a strange name as Nile's country, ancient dominions of the Zamorin's. No appellation like Malabar is used on the map. Here the map for 1795, after these events that used to be referred to by the Third Anglo-Mysore War and the Treaty of Sree. Then Malabar commissions mentioned earlier re-established new order. 1792 Malabar has been included in Bombay Presidency, in 1800 included in Madras Presidency. Most of the years of Alexander Walker's, as I said, in Malabar had been military campaigns, crossing rivers, like here on this sketch, taking part in military expeditions. Unfortunately, no image, at least, is known to me. And what is important here for me in this presentation is that he kept on writing, scribbling, copying, rewriting, writing notes, notes to notes, sub-notes. This is an entire archive. And it is clear while studying today that the man thought about his own writing probably at a very early stage as something to be preserved in history, something that was not only meant by him as a project of a message to the posterity in terms of its contents, but also as an archive, and a sort of self-referencing volumes. And this little part that I'm going to show you in a while is like that. There are 2 or 3 volumes that are referring to themselves by numbers, by pages. So this is an organized archive, which has been organized by its author, not by librarians or libraries. That's most of these manuscripts. I hope something happened. Once again, I think that I'm not sure that I'm presenting anymore. I hope so. Here, the manuscript number 131797, NLS, stands for National Libraries of Scotland. Probably the most famous one out of the whole collection, namely the 5-volume History of Malabar, which is partly a translation of 2 original sources, so to say, partly comments by Walker himself. You can see the calligraphy parts, you can see the very fine character of his handwriting. Parts of the archive look like that, very clear to read. But another part is quite to the contrary. Very poor handwriting, difficult to decipher and discover, fragmentary. So the archive is made of items of very different quality. Here you have one of the copy of Karalopati, difficult to read actually. Fortunately, we have others which are better. But now let me switch to something that is going to interest us for this little presentation most, namely a volume catalogued in Edinburgh as manuscript number 13810, in 2 volumes actually, called Jadi Jatu. Alexander Walker apparently did not have anything like expertise in languages, and whatever he did was most probably thanks to his informants and his assistants. One of them, probably most important to him, we know his name. He was named Kalingal Kunyikoru, and in writings of the Walker, he's termed sometimes as his Manon. We know that he was a Tia, and we know also that he emerges later on as an assistant to Francis Buchanan. And very fine study by Abhilash Malayil tells a little story of this man. I recommend it to you. Here, the title page of something called Jadi Jatu. Whether we should read it as Jati, Jata, something like an origin of caste, or maybe Jati Chartu, a document of caste, we don't know. Anyway, the second volume of the same presents a little bit different title, which introduces us in that way to this world of Alexander Walker, which is made of many copies, not always the same, which testify to his changing views. So here we have Jadi Jatu, or a distinction of tribes, an account of the origin of customs of the castes in Malabar. A little bit more, probably more thought of title. And this volume is, so to say, accompanied by another volume, catalogued by the number of 13815, which is made of drawings. Alexander Walker had left several volumes that are accompanied by drawings. Most probably not all of them were by his hand. These, I think, were by his hand. They are not very good in quality. He was not a very good drawer, but he was a documentalist. We can see an ethnographic hand at these drawings. They are fitted with some names, which is quite important. We shall close up on one or two of them a little bit later. So these strange names, Namburi, Chakyara, Nambira, give you some taste of how Alexander Walker appreciates his world around. Here, what is the main curiosity for this talk is the page of this sketch, which is entitled Chakyara. You may not see it, but at the top of the same page left, we have the name in Malayalam, Chakyar, and here the same name in Tamil, Sakyara, and the strange subscript, dancing at night before a lamp. This volume of the sketches of the figures representing several whole array of castes of Malabar usually comes in pair, representing a man and a woman. Here Ilottama, Ilod Ama, this is how it is approximated in English by Alexander Walker. A little bit close up, Chakyara dancing at night before a lamp. There is a short description of the cast. We would say rather a stereotyped one as far as we know it today, mostly sourced from a version of Karalolpati, so it reproduces the legend of Chakyars as being as coming from the Nambudiris and being degraded from this caste by committing adultery, and a little bit more detailed story here says that when a Nambudiri had been caught in flagranti with the wife of another man, if that man produced the case quickly enough to the assembly of the Brahmins, they excommunicated the poor man by branding his back with hot iron, which is a detail that I didn't know from any other source, and by banishing him and the woman with whom he committed this deed away from the village. Now, this is how the pages which introduce the classification of the castes look in this volume called Jadi, Jatu, or the origin of the castes. You can see that there are Malayalam names, but stick to the page out of the cut out of something else. So it is not from the hand of the Alexander Walker. It shows, in general, a classification of caste which runs against the stereotyped one and refers to something that we know vaguely from Malabar, namely something like Varnas without Kshatriyas, but a little bit even different from that. We have first class, which is here made of Brahmins, as Alexander Walker writes it, made of 8 different classes. Second class is made here with something which he calls Kshatriyas, and then we have next page, fourth class made of Vaishyas, only one item, and then we have huge class called the fifth class, and added the qualification Sudran or Sudar, probably being the same as Shudra. And here only we find Chakyars under the item number 10, among other classes that we would call Ambalavasis, like warriors, Pisharati, Nambi, etc. Nambiars come very next to the Chakyars in this classification under number 11. This is the page 299 from the same volume, showing the beginning of the description of Chakyar with a strange English approximation of the Malayalam Chakyarode Ulbhavavum Maryadavum. And it is over there that we find the notes. So this seems to be a translation of this Jata, Jati Jada. But attached to that are notes by Alexander Walker himself. And these notes features 2 strange English approximations of Malayalam terms probably worth attention. Let me just read you for you. The notes read, when the Brahmins meet on the consoles of the temple, they light a large lamp and seat themselves around it. The assembly is called Arunya or Aranya. It is the duty of the Chakyar to attend the meeting before which they, the cursive is mine because I'm not sure whether they refers here to Brahmins or to Chakyars, before which they stand making certain signs or mysterious motions with their hand and feet, shifting continuously their posture and never remaining a moment in the same place. These movements are called Changaramanam or Changaramanam. Hence the name Chakyar. So apparently the word Changaramanam is here taken by Walker as source for the name of Chakyar. Now, what is Changaramanam is, I tried to consult the esteemed colleagues, especially Naru Narayanan was kind enough to offer a few guesses of what this could be. One most important of them probably is that of Chankramanam, sort of a circulation, approximation, and referring more probably to a technique of Abhinaya of Chakyars by referring to things past in a non-direct way, maybe. I don't know. Another one concerns the type of assembly for which Chakyar should be present. Arunya, Aranya, we don't know what it is, and it remains to be checked. I would most welcome any suggestion to how to decode these two names. An important thing is here to note that Alexander Walker either was told about or had seen himself that Chakyars at his time were said to have a duty to attend the meetings by Brahmins and be present there in some capacity, which is not more clear than that. Another sketch you can see here of interest to us is that of the Nambiars. As I said, Alexander Walker most probably was not a very good drawer, but still most important things of Miravo, which he calls, by the way, by another name, completely different than Miravo, can be seen here. So from that you can see that how how it could look like at this time by the end of 18th century. Yes, this is more or less all that I would like to draw your attention to you as a sort of curiosity, for which the main thing is the figure of Chakyars. Here, let me call it, let me take you back to here. Some remarks concerning the dress of the Chakyar at that time could be made out of this picture, rather minimal dress, so to say. This sketchbook, very interesting, as well as the description of the cast, hugely interesting, as well as the 6-volume history of Malabar remained unpublished and remained closed, if not locked, at the special reading room at the Edinburgh National Library of Scotland, which is not easily accessed. And this has an important lesson for us that containing archives in libraries can not necessarily be the act of opening them to the public, but rather something to the contrary, closing them. We know similar cases from the huge projects of digitizing the manuscripts in India and elsewhere, that huge projects end up in producing something which remains even more close than the originals. We have somehow to cope with it. I can see that my time has already gone, so let me just conclude that with something that Alexander Walker would probably have for us as a final message, even though these things have not been published. The archive remains as something organized from the beginning by his author, who always believed that whatever he scribbled, whatever he drew, whatever he wrote in forms of a note or a note to a note or a subnote has meaning. So keep on scribbling, keep on writing, and of course, keep on staging. Thanks. Thank you very much for your attention. That's all.
I don't know, Cezary, if you can hear me. Can you hear me? In any case, thank you. Thank you. I think we'll conclude the morning session. I think at some point tomorrow, perhaps, there'll be comments from the listeners and questions and so on. But I think for this morning, this is a good point to stop. And we know that lunch is probably waiting in the shala.
By that, we conclude the first day session. As part of the MADHUPARVAM committee and personally, I extend my warm gratitude to all of you who were present here. I also thank the speakers and the audience for giving us a wonderful session. Thank you. We'll continue tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Thank you.